Torej, dober dan, vsi res hvala, ker ste prišli na tretjo letos uporabniško konferenco o duševnem zdravju. Vse tri, torej tudi tretja poteka v tem prostoru na Fakulteti za socialno delo Univerze v Ljubljani, ki se je izkazala za res čudovitega partnerja pri stvareh, ki jih pač počnemo. Mi smo želeli že spomladi narediti to, torej da državi, predvsem državi pokažemo, da smo resen partner, torej ljudje z izkušnjo težav v duševnem zdravju in da ni razloga, da Slovenija ostaja iz neznanih razlogov popolnoma siva lisa na področju vrstniške podpore v celi Evropi. Na prvi konferenci spomladi smo govorili predvsem domači ljudje in razlagali, kaj mislimo, da bi bilo prav na tem področju narediti. Junija smo povabili prijatelje in tovariše iz sosednjih držav, kjer je vrstniška podpora v duševnem zdravju nekaj, kar se brez težav izvaja že dolga leta in je večina držav to sprejela kot nekaj povsem samoumevnega. Za jesen smo pa prihranili pravzaprav sovpadanje tega, da je bilo kar nekaj mojih kolegov in prijateljev z upravnega odbora Evropske zveze, bivših in še uporabnikov ter preživelcev psihiatrije ENUSP, kot vidimo tamle, prisotnih prejšnji teden na konferenci o duševnem zdravju. Potem smo imeli čez vikend prvič od korone sestanek upravnega odbora in danes smo tukaj zato, da vam predstavimo pravzaprav, kako v drugih evropskih državah poteka na nek način borba ljudi za svoje osnovne človekove pravice na področju duševnega zdravja in jaz vam bom predstavil svoje prijatelje po vrsti, kot bodo govorili. Prosim samo to, dali smo naokrog prezenčno listo, če boste se jo izpolnili in torej bili tudi kasneje pripravljeni sodelovati v katerikoli aktivnosti. Druga stvar je, zadaj so kave in rogljički, ki se jih da uporabljati tudi ves čas tegale plenarnega dela. Natančno opoldne je kosilo, ki bo trajalo približno 1 uro. Takrat seveda se ravno tako lahko naprej pogovarjamo. Potem bomo pa videli pravzaprav, kako nas bodo teme zanimale in kako bomo odpeljali še tisti popoldanski del. Moje ime je Tone Vrhovnik Straka, jaz sem predsednik društva Poglej. Smo trije soorganizatorji, 3 uporabniška društva iz Slovenije, pravzaprav edina društva, ki smo sestavljena izključno ali pa vsaj večinsko iz ljudi z neposredno izkušnjo na področju duševnega zdravja. Zato bi besedo dal kar svojima tovarišicama, pravzaprav Niki in Mojci, da nadaljujete. Hvala. Še ena stvar je, če se kdo čuti, ker seveda prezentacije kasneje bodo v angleščini, če se kdo čuti, da bi rabil mogoče prevajanje zraven, ga bomo seveda omogočili, naj mi dvigne roko in bomo tamle mogoče nekje v kotu simultano prevajali. Super, eno že imamo. Tako, torej vabim Mojco Nahtigal, predsednico Slišanja glasov Slovenije.
Pozdravljeni vsi, pač dobrodošli in gremo naprej.
Naslednja je Nika Cigoj Kuzma, predsednica društva Svizci.
Jaz vas vse lepo pozdravljam. Jaz sem napisala v angleščini svoj govor kratek, tako da vam bom kar povedala. First of all, you are welcome and I hope you will have a nice day and you will hear something new about this theme, peer support. Peer support is very important for helping to live independently in the community. We need to consider peer support as important providers in the community of Slovenia. It will be necessary to regulate the status and recognize the work of supporters as part of mental health services, which must be appropriately rewarded. It's about solidarity, the joint resolution of an individual solving the problem, and co-creating a path to a solution, informing, strengthening power, advocacy work. Like advocacy, which judging by experience is not sufficient, as it is necessary to have legal knowledge and a bar exam when defending in court. Our participation in the movement towards desinstitutionalization is also very important because based on our own experience and observation, we can more easily create a picture what is necessary to equip a resident in an institution for a qualified independent life in the community. We will spend the day together to transfer knowledge to each other and ensure the development of peer support in our own country and thus in the world in general. Together we can do more. Strengthening to strength of each individual and mutual assistance is important. Thank you very much.
Hvala. In zdaj še četrta soorganizatorka, torej predsednica ENUSP, Olga Kalina.
Good morning, good afternoon already almost. It's very nice to see you here on the third user conference in Slovenia. We at ENUSP are very happy to be here in Slovenia, in Ljubljana. Your city is very beautiful. We enjoyed it very much. And we hope that today's event will be useful for you and that you will hear the things that you will find interesting and maybe you will even decide to do some practical tips that we will suggest to you. We wanted to make sure that our content corresponds to the interests of the audience. So maybe you could just try to briefly say what would be the interests that you have. Like maybe you can just volunteer to say what you would like to hear, because we have much information about different topics, and if we know in advance about interests of people, we can just make it more targeted to your interests. So if you have something particular in mind that you would like to hear from us today, please say about that.
Hvala. In zdaj še torej gostiteljca, dr. Vera Grebenc, predstojnica katedre za duševno zdravje v skupnosti na fakulteti, za katero, kot sem rekel, je pravzaprav najbolj prijateljska gibanju, ki ga zastopamo.
Hvala, Tone. Ja, jaz sem pa tule kot predstavnica fakultete za socialno delo. Smo lahko kar ponosni, da nas sploh hočete imeti za partnerje, ker to je pomembno, kar tako za stroko socialnega dela, pa tudi za vse druge stroke, ki delajo na področju pomoči ljudem, da bi pravzaprav najprej mogli začeti tako, da bi odprle svoje prostore za to, da ljudje lahko do njih pridajo, ne pa da nam postavijo pred vrata vratarje, ki nas pol sprašujejo, kaj sploh tam iščemo. Tako da res dobrodošli in upam, da bomo še naprej sodelovali na tak način. kot rečeno, učimo se drug od drugega, naše študentke ne morejo postati dobre socialne delavke, če nimajo priložnosti biti v stiku z ljudmi, ki imajo izkušnjo, in takšni dogodki nam omogočajo, da lahko najdemo besede, s katerimi poimenujemo tisto, kar je potem središče našega skupnega dela in prizadevanj, zato da bi bilo ljudem boljše. Saj to je ta glavni cilj, da vsak od nas bi to življenje nekako znosno preživel in živel. In ne bil samo preživelec, ampak tudi imel nekaj od tega, da ima v življenju lahko reče, saj pa je se splačal živeti. Toliko, da jaz bi sam to rekla. No. Pa tamle v pauzi smo se prej še pogovarjali, preden smo se začeli, da bi bilo mogoče, če ne bo prevelika skupina, tudi zanimiv pogledati, odkot ste, tako da če se vam zdi, da imate tekom urnika priliko tudi se malo predstaviti drugemu, pa tudi mogoče izkoristite kakšno minuto, pa da boste se tudi tako še spoznali pa začutili. So welcome the colleagues from international organization, European organization, pa seveda so organizatorji, ki so bili pa že vsi tudi omenjeni. Tako da hvala lepa in dobrodošli in še pridite, prosim.
Hvala. Torej, s tem je uradni del odprt pravzaprav in jaz kar predajam gospej Olgi Kalina začetno predavanje. Izvoli.
I'm going to present information about European network of ex-users, users and survivors of psychiatry, and also about our work and our priorities. It is not going to be long, I hope, but just to give you an idea of what ENUSP is. ENUSP is a European network. We were created in 1990s, but officially registered in 1998. Currently, we unite 36 member organizations in 28 European countries. We unite organizations not only within European Union, but also outside European Union. That is why I became member of ENUSP and later chair of ENUSP. I am from Georgia, which is outside of the European Union, but still we have this possibility to act together, and in many cases the priorities for advocacy remain the same. Europe, for ENUSP purposes, is divided into 6 regions, and like that in colors, for each region, we have 2 board members, 1 board member, 1 deputy board member. These board members are elected by organizations, member of ENUSP in this particular region. Tony, for example, is representing one of the regions, not only Slovenia, according to the system. And basically, board members in charge of the region are supposed to communicate with other members in the region, collect problematic points or good practices, and communicate to the board about these regional specifics. ENUSP was organizing historically many events, many conferences, many empowerment seminars. One of the examples is the empowerment seminar in 2015, which were held in Brussels with all these flags, you see. All these people are users and survivors of psychiatry that came from different European countries. The same holds for this picture, which is a year later, in 2016, we organized this empowerment seminar in Berlin. ENUSP has connections, good connections with other European organizations. For example, we have connection and we are a member of European Disability Forum. We are a member also of European Patients Forum, and representatives of these 2 organizations were attending our seminar in Berlin to actually deliver presentations about work of the organizations. And this guy in the first picture is representative of Fundamental Rights Agency, which is also, well, connected a bit to our work because Fundamental Rights Agency has accent on human rights, obviously. ENUSP sometimes, when we have a chance, tries to deliver also presentations, training outside of the European countries. This year, I personally had this honor to be a trainer in Africa, in Togo, for professionals. And just imagine professionals in Africa didn't hear that de-escalation exists. They have no information about de-escalation practices. So, and let alone human rights and psychiatry. It is very necessary to spread the knowledge. And any person active in this field can do a lot to do it, to spread the knowledge among professionals. ENUSP is very much active in the field of advocacy around the UNCRPD. UNCRPD is a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Initially, ENUSP experts were involved in the drafting of the text of the convention. Our experts like Mats Jespersson from Sweden was directly involved in negotiations and discussions around Article 12, for example, about legal capacity, the right of the person to make decisions, even when the person has severe mental health problems. Our board member, Jolaine Santagods, was actively involved in advocacy related to UNCRPD. Unfortunately, she passed away this year in April, and we are very sad about it. She was involved in the first review of the European Union by the UNCRPD committee, in the shadow reporting, in the meetings with the committee, and now we have to participate in the second review, basically without her involvement, which is a very sad story for us. So when we see CRPD, it is sometimes not understandable to people why it is so important, especially for mental health. I would like to highlight priorities that ENUSP has for advocacy with regard to UNCRPD. There are articles in the UNCRPD that specifically target our rights, the most painful and problematic topics in psychiatry. One of such articles of the UNCRPD is Article 5, which is on equality and non-discrimination. According to the article, people with disabilities are equal members of society and simply cannot be discriminated against. And it is easy to think about it and say, well, we all are equal. It's not a problem in the European Union, maybe. But this is not the case because there are many discriminatory practices also legalized by laws in European Union countries. For example, forced treatment, guardianship, deprivation of legal capacity, also forced placement in institutions against your will. Sometimes the use of restraints both by police and medical professionals without, obviously, the consent of the person. All these practices actually constitute discrimination under Article 5 and should be eradicated. But not many people and professionals know about the meaning of the UNCRPD in mental health. The second article, which is very critical for our rights, is Article 12 about equal recognition before the law. You probably know guardianship regimes when the person is deemed not capable of giving consent to treatment, for example. Like because of mental health problems, the person is deprived of the right to consent or to actually refuse the treatment. And this may be also the case for financial things, for placement, and for other decisions. So Article 12 says that in such cases, people must not be deprived of the right to decide. But if they need support, if they have difficulties with consenting or refusing something, then they must be provided support to do so. And you see that in mental health, this article means a lot because it's almost, well, in any country of the European Union, it is not implemented at all. It is very historically damaging. It has a lot of bad practices behind. A lot of people are already deprived of legal capacity, and it is not easy to design support mechanisms and to make them really working in each country of the European Union. So big work is needed to do it, but this requires political will and advocacy, and that's why I'm saying that these articles are priorities for ENUSP to advocate for our rights. Article 14 concerns liberty and security of person, and this is about forced detention and placement in institutions. When you have mental health crisis, police may come, or first doctors may come, then they decide that you are a risk to yourself or others, and then they may call police, and together they may place you in a mental health hospital. This exact practice constitutes violation of Article 14. Sometimes people say, no, Article 14 doesn't say anything about mental health. It does, and the committee actually in the guidelines related to Article 14 describes that exactly this practice constitutes violation of Article 14. So if a government ratified UNCRPD, they must be working on reform to abolish forced institutionalization, like in this case, placement of persons without their consent in hospitals, also forced treatment and guardianship. And this is very complicated to achieve. And actually, nobody wants it, more or less. In the European Union, sometimes people say, well, European Union is so rich. We don't have problems. We have problems maybe in Africa, in poor countries, but not here. Sometimes problems are very bad. This is 2019's photo from Romania, and this is a photo from rehabilitation center. It's not even some sort of prison. People are sitting in these glass boxes all the day long without any help. They didn't have any psychologists or psychiatrists working in the center, just low medical staff. And people were sitting there all day long. Just imagine what kind of mental health problems you will have after such rehabilitation. It is critical also to consider Article 13 of the UNCRPD, which says about access to justice. We do have problems, but what can we do with these problems? Usually you go to a lawyer who can take your case to court. But in case of mental health, lawyers do not want to take your cases to court. In many cases they say, oh, you deserved it, it was okay. In some cases they say, we don't have knowledge about mental health. We are not mental health professionals. So whatever mental health professional says is okay with us. If professional says that you must be detained in the institution, then you must be detained. We cannot challenge it. So lawyers refuse to protect our rights. And this means that we eventually, even in case of grave problems, we cannot achieve this access to justice. Also guardianship. Sometimes people are deprived of their legal capacity, and only with the help of the guardian they can access courts. And sometimes guardians are exactly the people who violate our rights. So if the guardian, for example, says that you must be placed in some institution and you want to challenge this and go to court, and you need the consent of the guardian to start this procedure, you just imagine that you never are going to achieve this access to court. So it's very critical and very forgotten when speech is about mental health and good things. We always forget that to have good mental health, we need to be safe. We need to be protected from violence. Otherwise, if we're not safe, we are not going to have good mental health at all. And this is also something recent from Romania. It happened in the residential house for persons with disabilities. It was this year, and they had persons with disabilities in the basement under the house, and they were in very bad conditions with feces, urine, blood around. One woman was asking to give her water, actually, when they entered this basement. And the bad thing is that it was done, the monitoring was done by a non-governmental organization. It was not even state inspection. State inspection was there one day before, and they didn't see any problems with that. So later, when they had this big scandal and 2 ministers lost their seats as a result of the scandal, the explanation that was given by the state monitoring system was that we didn't have access to the basement, so we couldn't see it. Well, the job of the monitoring missions is actually to check everything. And this is a picture from Ukraine before war, where people were kept naked totally in the institution, similar to Romania, and they were in extremely bad conditions. By the way, why they were totally naked during night? Any hypothesis? What was the logic behind that? Yeah, well, the logic was that personnel didn't want to wash dirty linen. So they preferred to just keep these people there and then wash the floor. Like in case of like animals, cows. Problems with women with disabilities, they are formulated in Article 6 of the Convention. And we know that women are especially vulnerable to violence. Women who have mental health problems are 10 times more vulnerable to sexual violence than the rest of women, according to research. And this happens because sometimes they are not capable of saying no, but sometimes perpetrators think that nobody will believe these women if they go to police and start to report about the fact that they became victims of violence, that police will not believe them. And this is enough to actually commit this violence against these vulnerable women. One of these examples is, again in Romania, but it's only because Romania has a good monitoring organization, you know. There are countries around Romania, like Bulgaria, Hungary, and other countries that have similar problematic situations, but monitoring there almost doesn't happen. Only if CPT comes and checks. This is the illustration not of the Romanian problems, this is illustration of the good work of Romanian monitoring missions, just to make it clear, because in other countries we don't have such monitoring mechanisms, effective mechanisms. So in this institution, personnel was forcing patients to have sexual behavior with each other. It was chaotic. It wasn't about deep relationship. These 2 men and 1 woman they just met at that moment. They didn't have any previous relationship. And it was filmed by personnel, a woman, by the way, and she published it on internet. And that is how it leaked and got known. But just imagine how many such videos are filmed and just kept secretly without any publication. So obviously we have lots of problems in European Union and outside of the European Union. And actually the governments have the obligation to raise awareness about rights of people in mental health systems. They have this obligation. And if professionals say, we don't know about CRPD, this is a problem of the government, because exactly the government has this obligation to raise awareness among people, stakeholders, and also society about human rights and about CRPD and the standards of the UN CRPD. But obviously it's not done because according to our members from different countries, we did a survey among our members. Even in Finland, people say, Well, sometimes neighbors are just saying that we don't want this house of persons with disabilities in the neighborhood. And they are protesting collectively with the municipalities who want to build such a residential house in their neighborhood. So even in Finland, we have this stigma. And stigma is something that is there because of the lack of knowledge, because of lack of this information and lack of awareness-raising campaigns run by the state and non-governmental actors. And this is a violation of Article 8, again, because it's about information. Well, the situation, like I said, is not good at all. But at the same time, there are promising things. It's not only about bad things. There are extremely good things in European Union, outside of European Union. There are good practices in mental health that deserve to be widespread, that deserve to be known to society, and deserve to get more funding for their functioning. But the problem is they are not expanding. They sometimes operate in countries for 30 years, and they are not expanded because of the lack of funding, lack of interest, and because other practices are easier to implement, you know? One of the good practices example is the personal ombudsman program in Sweden. This personal ombudsman program exactly is running there for approximately 30 years, and it was designed to help people in isolation. They are walking in the street and looking for persons who are maybe homeless, who are very much isolated, who don't have trust with other people, don't have connections with other people. These people are trying to get in touch with these problematic, the people who have problems and who are very much isolated. They're trying to start to speak with them, to build trust, and only after they build this connection and establish trust, they try to, suggest some sort of interventions, including, for example, maybe to go together to some social service, to get some food or cleaning service or some assistance, but only if the person wants. And initially they were saying that you will be surprised, but the majority of people who were asked what is their priority in this bad situation with bad conditions, hungry, no good living conditions, they were asking philosophical questions. What is the meaning of my life? This was the top question people were asked. So actually, personal ombudsmen are not like a traditional social worker at all. This is a person who is speaking with people and is capable of this relationship without enforcing any services on the person. Sometimes they are sitting together on the floor, drinking tea, and talking about philosophical questions, not related to any services. Because this is, first of all, about relationship and trust. And this is a very effective and helpful practice that deserved its position as the best, one of the good services. And it deserves to be implemented in other countries as well. It supports legal capacity provision. Obviously, it doesn't end with personal ombudsman. There are, for example, crisis intervention services like Soteria houses that are not about hospital treatment. These services are about alternative place to go when you experience mental health problem. You don't have to be placed in a hospital. You just need to be somewhere safe and comfortable to overcome your crisis. And it doesn't have to be a medical facility. And sometimes people have problems when they stay within their families because families too can cause very bad problems with mental health. So people very often need some place alone from the family, and maybe with some support available, like psychological support or maybe support of other people who went through the same experience, peer support. So these places like soteria houses or like link houses or other type of such houses, they serve as an alternative to traditional hospital treatment. And this is possible. But this is more difficult when we have laws about enforced placement and forced treatment, because it's much easier to just catch the person, place somewhere, and inject the person. It's much easier than to try to, take time and maybe try to explain and try to get this trust from the person. It takes more time and more human resources to achieve this. But we're talking about suffering. We're talking about humanity. And we need to understand that the outcome is indeed good mental health, both for people and for societies. And until we have such practices as were described before, like, placement in these horrible facilities and violence, we are not going to achieve the goal of having good mental health. So this all is what ENUSP is advocating for, asking for, and my colleagues will continue to describe all good services and also the ways how we can advocate for abolition of bad practices and establishing of good services. Thank you very much for your attention.
Tako, poveste svoje ime, odkot prihajate, če seveda to želite, in zastavite vprašanje.
Hi, my name is Aleš and I would like to know how can I get that job?
Very simple.
You mean personal ombudsman's job? Well, if this is what you're talking about, then you probably need to move to Sweden and try to apply. The thing is that we don't, in the majority of countries, personal ombudsman service is not developed. So you may want to apply to an organization in Slovenia to give this overview of the service. It is available on internet. You can search in Google. You can get the description of the service. It is a recognized best practice, so it's not going to be problematic to say that this is something recommended even by WHO. So then you need to get some funding and try to get this pilot. And this may be done with the efforts of organization, one or several organizations, but this is indeed something that is very much needed if you want to build a humane system of support for... You prefer to move to Sweden?
But since Mats Jaspersen, who is father of this program, is also our board member and friend, maybe you could pester him to come here to Slovenia and tell us about it. So maybe.
Mats Jaspersen was a personal ombudsman for 20 years. He has indeed experience with that, and he's delivering lectures about that. So, well, if you are interested in hearing more about it, we can think about it, either even online maybe or with invitation of Mats. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Katarina. I'm a social worker and I work in the field of deinstitutionalization. I was wondering about this monitoring you mentioned in Romania, because in Slovenia we also have knowledge about a lot of violent practices in institutions, but also in community or psychiatric hospitals. And we don't have a good monitoring system, and people don't get any justice for what happens to them. So maybe if you know something more about this, it would be interesting to hear.
The majority of European countries ratified CAT, which is Convention Against Torture, and they have to have a mechanism which is called National Prevention Mechanism. in that form or this form, but it must be in your country. The thing is that this mechanism is checking only torturous practices like beatings, like maybe restraints that is overused, maybe seclusion for longer than necessary, but they still are going inside and checking, and they have this mandate. But sometimes they think, oh, we only have our budget for prisons, we don't need to check these institutions. So first step would be to discover this instrument. Which is this instrument? You may want to ask public defender, because usually it's under the umbrella of public defender's office. And then if they're not doing it, you can just advocate for them. Look at other NPMs, they are doing it. They are working, including NPM in Georgia. I'm myself a monitor of such institutions, plus with disability myself. I have this diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. And experience of institutionalization. So, and because of that, I was employed as a monitor of this mechanism. So you can refer to others and say, well, CPT even is monitoring psychiatric institutions and such closed residential facilities. So obviously around we have lots of violations. Please do it. It's a matter of advocacy in this case. Another version is to create alternative mechanism of monitoring by persons with disabilities themselves. For example, Tony was exactly thinking about this idea about how to do it. Also with his personal involvement in this situation. It is very necessary to have several functioning mechanisms because only NPM cannot cover all institutions. You better have several, and you better to frame it as, advocacy and saying that also under Article 33 of the UNCRPD, persons with disabilities are entitled to have monitoring of their own. So you can just refer both to NPM mechanism, undercut Convention Against Torture, and to Article 33 of the UNCRPD legally. And just try to cry about it, that we don't have every normal country has, and we don't. How come? Yeah, well.
And I would add, there are other monitoring mechanisms, both with the United Nations and with the Council of Europe. And so you can look on the website and you can see the dates. When will the inspector from the Council of Europe, from the Council Against Torture be visiting Slovenia? He gives the dates. You can contact them in advance and say, I would like to meet you when you come to my country. And you can report this information to them. This is what I did in France. I was lucky because they contacted me and they wanted information from me. So they are very interested in information you have from the ground, and if you have a lived experience, they listen to you. Okay, they write this report. They tell the Slovenian government, don't do that. But it's already something, When you have eyes in these places that see what is going on, it's different than when they're hidden and nobody knows what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, if I may add, but I'll continue in English so my friends will know, we have such mechanism in Slovenia. It's under Varuh človekovih pravic, but I tried it once because Ljubljana's psychiatric hospital remained closed after COVID 1 year after all other hospitals were opened to the visitors. But then I was more lucky with the Amnesty International to open those before this mechanism against torture started working on it, So it's a bit long-lasting process here in Slovenia.
I would like to add that the media could be very helpful. You have graphic, you have videos, you have a witness, direct witness, that helps a lot.
Jaz bi mogoče sem prej odgovorila na prejšnjo vprašanje, ko je gospod postavil. V Sloveniji že obstaja vrstniški podporni delavec, ampak nažalost to ni delovno mesto, oziroma je, ampak je brezplačno, tako da smo prostovoljci.
In Slovenia, all peer supporters are voluntary by now. So we do exist, but unpaid.
Czech Republic implemented peer support, they started 10 years ago, and now they have it a requirement in services. So each service, outpatient service, must have employed peer supporter. And you may refer to Czech Republic's example when you try to advocate for paid work for peer supporters, because they also didn't have anything. And they still have medical orientation in services mostly, but they managed to do it, like peer support. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question? Okay.
Hi, my name is Lano, and I was a little bit late, but I'm just wondering, what can each individual, what steps can they take to break the stigma? Because some people don't understand it and the others don't believe it. Thank you.
Well, as individuals, so we all have responsibility of reacting appropriately and sometimes stopping speech that is not appropriate. So when we see in social media some comments around mental health that are insulting, that are problematic, we may just want to argue with that, to protest against that, to provide alternative information. Also, we may want to support people who disclose their own mental health problems and maybe protect them a bit from being bullied by others. Well, sometimes it's a fight in the comments, but eventually you can even as an individual raise awareness about that. If you happen to have your own experience of mental health services, usually it's very effective to disclose your experience, but it may also be very dangerous if you are in a society that is stigmatizing. Some people may really get damaged, so it's always better to be part of a group of persons with lived experience to speak about it. And also it may be possible as an individual to try to join an organization and try to help as a volunteer including in awareness raising events, but also in other types of events the organization has to try to spread awareness, because stigma arises from the lack of knowledge, and people do have lack of knowledge. So any sort of exhibition, creativity, art installations about mental health are welcome to fight the stigma. Yeah.
Thank you. More questions? Super. So, because we have to finish till at 12 for lunch. So next thing is Liz Bronson and Stephanie Woolley, our friends from France and Ireland. Please.
Hi everyone. Thanks for coming to listen to us. I'm going to let Stephanie talk first. We're going to talk about some practical tips, some experience about how user organizations can get off the ground in building a user movement.
We need So hello again, and it's wonderful to be here and see Tony in action with Poglej and with the Hearing Voices Network, and I understand Groundhog organization also. It's really important for us people with lived experience to get together and make change, as you probably agree. So we thought we could share with you some advice or some information on how we have been doing this for many years in different countries, and just some points that could be useful for you. The first point I wanted to say was that you can't be alone. You know, you really cannot start something alone, and you need a team, because it takes time to attract people, get them interested, but together you have much more chance of success with your objectives, having realistic activities and sharing responsibilities. It's really, really worth it in the beginning to take the time, because we often see these like one man, one woman shows where only one person is responsible. They try to do everything and other people get dependent and they expect them to continue to always do things. And what matters sometimes, people say, but it goes too slowly. But what matters is not always the end result, like your super newsletter or your super event. What matters is when you kind of work together and the whole process you go through together to agree and really collaborate and change things. And then with your organization, it depends. Maybe if you're with a network like Hearing Voices, it's one thing, but it's always a choice when you have members. ENUSP is a particular case because ENUSP is exclusively composed of persons who are ex-users, users, survivors of psychiatry, or people who are with psychosocial disabilities, or they can self-identify any way they want. It's important for you to self-identify. You know, too many people go around saying, hi, I'm a schizophrenic, hi, I'm bipolar. You know, I'm sorry, you're a person first. So why are people there? Do you want to also have professionals join you? Do you want a hybrid organization with family members? Do you want to be on your own? It's true that a lot of organizations have taken off because of the support and help of professionals, enlightened professionals. It's true. And it can help with contacts, credibility. There can be other reasons to also work with professionals. Then I think another point that's important is this idea of transparency and democracy. Even if we talk all the time about transparency, it's still really important to share information so everybody understands, everybody knows, you're all on the same page. If people can't read the information, they don't look at it, okay. But they have the information when they want, they can, and you work together, there's no secrets, you know? And it's always a choice to decide, do I want to work within the mental health care system, try to change things from inside? Or am I going to be outside and try to fight against, protest against everything? Both techniques can work. The advantage when you're a user organization is that you are not there to support only this therapy or only psychoanalysis or only this school of thought. You know, you can explore all kinds of different approaches and you can give people information. Because when you have information, you can make your own choice. And that is what is important. Everyone has the right to their own choice, to decide what's right for them. And the only way to do that is to have a choice. Anyway, there has to be different choices. And then what's good for you is good for you. And you can't tell someone else, you know, what they should do. And this is where the peer work can be really, really interesting. So that's kind of the points I wanted to mention. And if you have some questions, we can talk more about how organizations can get off the ground, how you decide what funding you want to accept, what you don't want to accept, things like that. And Liz will be talking a little more about some projects that user organizations have done.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'd like to show you a short video about a project that was started in Ireland by a user group, and they had this vision of a space where people could go in difficulty. And I think the video explains it really well. So I'm going to show it to you, and then I'd like to talk a bit about an example of training in peer support that I found really useful. And both of these we're presenting them just as ways to get you thinking about different things, and you can find some more information and we'll answer questions. But this, it's not very long, so I hope you can see it. Yeah.
Oh, it was freezing today, wasn't it?
Yep.
I went for a walk. I was just glad it wasn't raining.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't think I can help much. But when I'm here, I can listen. When you want, I'm here. Was it a hard day today?
Yeah. I have an appointment tomorrow, with my GP. I just thought I'm having a hard time with some words my brother said. They keep playing around in my head, and I wonder if they're true. He called me this afternoon. We're all supposed to go.
After 5 p.m. every day, there's nothing really to do. If you feel down, if you feel lonely, or if you just want to get away from the cold, the GP's offices are closed, therapists are finished work. There's nowhere really you can go to just rest, relax, sit down and have other people around. Nowhere really to go that you don't have to pretend to want a €4 cup of coffee just to sit down. It makes me long for community. At our community cafe, we create a space for everybody. If you're down, lonely, need to talk, need to be quiet, or think, or just be alone, we can. We create an oasis in the city to have the space, a special place, for everybody. When you enter, you indicate whether or not you'd like to speak to someone. We have 2 different spaces, one for conversation and chat, and one with softer lighting, salt lamps and battery-powered candles, cushions and throws to feel safe, cozy and protected. If we choose to talk, peer connectors are here to speak, to make tea and coffee, to help us feel at home, and most importantly, to listen. Because just having someone around to listen can help calm worries and quiet storms.
So that was an example of a project that was imagined and dreamt up by one of the people in the city where I live, and he got a lot of support from the business. He went with this idea and got support from business community and artists to make the video, and then to create the cafe, which the idea was that there could be a cafe like this in every town or village where people would know to go if they're in crisis. And that place actually happens to be across the road from where the main psychiatric unit is, and where people, if they're feeling in real crisis, they can go. The way to access help outside 24 hours, outside working hours would be to go into the accident and emergency. And the idea would be that the cafe could be a place where somebody could actually get a peer supporter to go, well, first of all, to sit down and maybe de-escalate the feelings of crisis and tension. But if things, if it was necessary, to have somebody to support them to go across the road and wait to be seen by professionals. So the idea was so positively, it's seen as a good practice in Ireland. The Minister for Mental Health came and visited, and she was really enthusiastic and wanted to see a lot more spaces like that in the country, in Ireland. And that's an example of something that was set up by peer support, a peer support group, for people who believe a different way is possible. And I'd also like to just mention, I think Guadalupe will be speaking about more peer support training. But this is a project that was started no, maybe I'm wrong. But there are examples of peer support that have been developed by service user organizations and that are independent of the system, because we have peer support projects that are designed to help people work in services, but this approach is not designed in that way. It's designed to help people relate to each other as human beings, and so there are sort of different principles and ways of working together, tasks, and that are very much about building relationship, about seeing the person you're working with as a horizontal relationship. There's no expert in the situation, and people are learning together. So it's American-based, but they are moving into Europe, and there's a European coordinator, and they will provide training and are definitely open to, so as I say, providing the training in. So it becomes accessible because it's happening online as well as with face-to-face trainings, and the more this way of working with people, the more people learn to build community together by coming together with the same values and the same experience and the same, well, not the same experience, but values that allow us to build bridges and therefore allow us to build really strong, cohesive groups that work together. The more of this that happens in mental health, it's like any social movement. We need to build it from the ground up, and we need to do that by working in ways that are proven to work in other places. So there are many instances of good practice in mental health, and I've just given you two examples that I'm familiar with. And then these are spaces where you create these groups and work together. You can actually learn a lot about all of the kind of things that Olga has been speaking about, using the convention, using the legal advocacy routes to seek for better conditions, experiences, access to justice, and non-discrimination. So I think that's all I have to say, and I'm going to invite you to ask us questions, or would love to engage in discussion with you. Hopefully later there'll be time for that, but right now, any questions? Or? Oh yeah, we could open the window now. We could open the blinds. No.
Maybe we need some light before you fall asleep. I feel like falling asleep. I'm so tired. I also wanted to say that it's useful. It's really useful to have bridges between your organizations. Like, we have a lot in common. It's surprising. I remember when I started getting involved in the disability community, and I remember thinking, am I disabled? You know, you have an idea of what is disability, and when you understand it's society that disables you, it's not your fault. It's not you that is disabled. It's the community and the way society doesn't give you a place and accept you as an equal person. So, if you identify with disability or not, that is not important under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UNCRPD. This is something that applies to anyone, even if they are disabled for a few weeks, a few months, they go back to life, normal, whatever. It still is support for you. It still gives everyone rights. That's important to know. And so when I found out the similarities that we have in this disability community, I was amazed. I was like, what? This deaf person who can't hear, they have the same problems I do. They're treated like a child, like they don't know anything. I was so surprised. I didn't know. So relations with disability organizations, other mental health user organizations, can be really, really useful, really helpful. And I know you're starting out, and we'll find out more about Slovenia, but I think there are some people from the disability community here, national disability community, or no? Because of the role they play to improve things. And I was also thinking about that question. I don't know, I think she left. But there's also the visits of the special rapporteurs, we call them. The special rapporteurs visit your country regularly. They do reports for the government, and they tell the government what to do. So you can be in touch with them. You can say, I would like to meet you when you come to Slovenia, and I would like to tell you what they're doing here. And they listen to you. Really. So I don't know if you have any questions, if we could help you with any information or...
Thank you. How thin is the line between just needing someone to listen to you or getting actual professional help? Thank you.
Okay. Who of you will answer? Liz?
It's an interesting question, and it presupposes that only professionals know how to listen to people. And that's part of the problem, I think, in our society, that we have professionalized helping. Whereas people naturally in communication, and this is where I think the training helps you to actually sit with somebody in discomfort, to sit with somebody in distress, and to be calm in that situation and not to have panic and feel, oh, we need professionals here. Because quite often obviously not all the time, but often what it is that somebody wants is just somebody to help them calm down and reconnect with their humanity and the sense every one of us has of our own inner stability. But that is something you learn, and the more we practice it in conversations with each other, and not to be afraid of like heightened emotion, and not to see it as a pathology, that it's a natural response to really stressful situations. And keeping things normalized, and also for the supporter to know that there's somebody around with them, that they're not on their own in a situation that they feel overwhelmed by. But I think that the more people can get training and understand their own strength and our ability to, because we've been in that situation. If you've walked the journey of losing, becoming mentally distressed, you know what it's like, and you can be there for other people. And the thing is not to be afraid of that, and not to feel that only a psychotherapist or only a psychologist or psychiatrist can help. And that's one of the things I really loved about the training in intentional peer support, is that it normalizes the experience of distress and pain as something that is human and that we can share and we can support each other with by demystifying it. Can I just say one other thing about your earlier question in terms of breaking stigma? There's a project that Amnesty were running for us with we were involved with, and one of the things they did to break down stigma was at festivals they would have a tent or a stand where they had a talking library, and somebody with a diagnosis could sit and answer questions from a member of the public to come in, and they could ask them anything, so that the person with the lived experience was the talking library, and they could share their experience in a one-to-one kind of situation, so that it was about breaking stigma and allowing people to actually talk to somebody with a so-called diagnosis and ask them questions about their lives. So it's one example of something that can be done on a simple way at a festival, or have it at a regular event where there's an invitation to come and talk to somebody with experience. So,
thank you, Liz. And about talking library, we have a large tradition of Živa knjižnica in Slovenia. We do it quite often. And this Saturday at the community day at the World Congress about Suicide, which will be taking place in Portorož, Janja, who's sitting there, will be a living book with a very good story about this topic. So if you have time on Saturday, they still are kind of taking entries of people who would like to be there. So let's go further. Guadalupe pardon, one more question.
Hello, I'm Luca. I'm a person with an experience and I want to be more. I have a question for the rest of the audience. I'm not aware if we in Slovenia have anything about training in peer support, the intentional peer support, intentional. And I would like to know more if anything is done dedicated to that. Thank you.
Okay, can anyone, lahko kdo odgovori na to, ali v Sloveniji, smem jaz kar v slovenščini. Torej, ravno temu sta bili namenjeni že dve konferenci letos. Država namreč nam je nekaj začela obljubljati, ampak jesen je že tukaj, razpisal še nikjer. ampak mi upamo, da vendarle se lahko kaj na tem področju premakne. No? Imamo pa obe konferenci posneti in na voljo na YouTube kanalu društva Poglej, kot bo tudi ta tretja, ki jo danes snemamo.
I was wondering if you have self-help groups in Ljubljana. Do you already get together in little groups or among yourselves and discuss and share what's going on? With Poglej or with Groundhog, or it's not easy to find a place to meet, you know. And a lot of people don't want to go back to a mental health clinic or hospital to find a room to meet. Sometimes cafes can be better to have a meeting. So can you tell us if you already have some peer meetings or support groups or?
Well, I'm not sure about the others, but in our association, Hearing Voices, we've been running self-help groups or support groups since 2015 or 16, and in the last 3 or 4 years, we've been carrying on something called a school for facilitators of peer-led support groups, and yes, that's the short information.
Okay.
For some years, we've been hosted by a homeless organization called Kings of the Street, and in the last 3 or 4 years, we've been getting place for our support groups by a youth outreach organization called BOP, Foundation BOP. So we don't have our own space, our own places, but we are all the time being hosted by somebody else.
Okay. Till ladies prepare next presentation, maybe another thing is Club BP or meetings for people with bipolar diagnosis is running more than 20 years every month. And this year we are adding another group for people not just bipolar, which will also be each third Thursday at the same place we meet. So if anyone's interested, please talk to me later. Okay. Lupe, shall I announce you? Okay. And now our friend and co-chair of ENUSP, Guadalupe Morales Caño, from Madrid, from Spain, a president of Mundo Bipolar, will show us what she is doing and why it is time to act.
Okay. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here. We've been working for months on this seminar and we're really happy to be here. The first thing I have to say is that my English is not as good as everybody else in my organization, so please forgive me if I make any kind of mistakes. Well, I have to read because for me it's much easier to do my presentations, and okay, so Time to Act will come to this title because it was a program of the United Nations regarding mental health, which are a very good exposition of a UN officer. So I have been around since 2002, first with a virtual online website in the internet, of course, with a lot of participation of people all over the world around bipolar disorder. That was the first step we gave. We learned so much in that website, in that forum, because only people that had that disease participated. This was 2002. And we really didn't know anything about anything. So this peer support, peer-to-peer, online, virtual support, ended to be many times face-to-face personal support. And for example, in Spain, when we start doing all these things, there were only 2 associations of patients, as they called it, one in Catalonia and one in Madrid. So after 6 years of intensive work, well, we weren't paid, of course, was voluntary work. 13 new associations were created, thanks to our work, our collective work. So that was something. Little by little, I started going to the European Union, and I found out some wonderful people from ENUSP in 2007. And this was something so new for me, because till then I was only focusing on symptoms, on treatments, of course we learned a lot about lifestyle, because among us we knew that if we didn't sleep well, something could happen, you see. We learned to understand ourselves, self-management, which I think is essential. But these people from ENUS really was something terrific for me. They started talking to me about rights, about the UN Convention. So little by little, we paid attention on the social aspects, and little by little, rights became more and more important. So I'm very grateful for being in touch with ENUS, really. It is true that there are brave people, they are very intelligent, they know a lot, and I am learning very much from them, little by little. So I have reached the point that freedom is therapeutic. And where this idea came from, it came from a graffiti that was written by Ugo Guarino at the former San Giovanni Psychiatric Hospital in Trieste. Guarino was the creator of this drawing, made a series of illustrations about the confinement of people with mental health problems. The dismantling of psychiatric hospitals was proposed by the Italian psychiatrist Franco Basaglia, a pioneer of the modern concept of mental health. So, no way. We need support, we need care, we need understanding, we need respect. We don't need to be in close words, nor lose our rights, nor be restrained, nor be forced to have medicines. That is not care. I learned that from my friend and colleague, Jolene Centerwoods. She was very clear in this respect. Coercion is not care. And I follow her words. So here's another one, another drawing of Guarino. Inside out. In this, Guarino says, by the way, Guarino, his mother had schizophrenia and had been living in an asylum for a long time. So Guarino says, there's nothing to explain. It is common sense. It's that care that we do not always have to discern what is true and what is manipulation of those who dominate us. This was more than 45 years ago. These are important words from Franco Basaglia, in my opinion. The dominant ideology says that madman is dangerous and has to be locked up in an asylum. Under every psychiatric illness, there's a social conflict. People who have no voice go to the asylum. That is the poor, that disinherited freedom is what heals. We don't need anything else. First of all, we are free citizens. Here's another reproduction in one of the buildings of the Trieste Therapeutic Community facilities in Italy. On May 13, 1978, 45 years ago, the Italian parliament approved the Basaglia Law, which abolished psychiatric hospitals known as insane asylums and eliminated forced internment and coercive measures such as mechanical, chemical, and isolation or seclusion. Since then, people with mental disorders receive full citizenship rights. I was honored to be in 2018 together with Tony and with Jolene in the celebration of the 40th anniversary of the Basaglia Law had decreased the closure of mental hospitals. In the photo, Jolene Saint-August, friend of colleague, as I have already said, who passed away recently. She was a brave activist, the best I've ever met. Her motto, as I said, coercion is not care. So, very, very briefly, I'm going to talk about the human rights approach. And a key element of this human rights approach is our right to participation. In this UN convention, persons with disabilities are not viewed, I don't know what's going, are not viewed as objects of charity, medical treatment, and social protection, rather as subjects with rights, who are capable of claiming those rights and making decisions for their lives based on their free and informed consent, as well as being active members of society. Keep this sentence, this short sentence, free and informed consent. That is the key of all things that are done against us without our approval. So, just talking about participation, the UN Convention says participation is important to correctly identify specific needs and to empower the individual. This is the speech I mentioned at the beginning. Craig Mockingbird, it's a UN office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And there was an event, as I told you, called Time to Act that happened in the 26th of September of 2018. There's a video about this intervention, but it's not, we don't have the rights. That's why we don't show it here. So he started saying, mental health issues are part of the human experience, but unfortunately, apart from the human experience, it has been dogged by imposed indignity and human rights violations really for centuries. This is absolutely true. Along the history, we have been hidden, we still are chained, we are still in places that you don't see the light of the day, you don't receive fresh air, you don't receive proper food, and the main thing is that you don't have freedom, you don't have liberty. You are many times, as Olga Kalina used to say, in worse situation than those in jail. So Craig Mockeber says, really for us, is an historic opportunity to finally, maybe for the first time in history, to actually get this right. But we think to do so, we need to make sure it's done on the human rights based on the paradigm for mental health. And we really think, I think, one overriding message as we move forward, and that's really is a call for vigilance to ensure, this is the important part, that all of this new attention, all of these new developments do not compromise the agency and voices and human rights of persons with psychosocial disability. We must be there. It is our right to be there, to be part of the conversation, to be heard. So, as our chair already said, ENUSP was very active in this revision on 2015 of the European Union and its implementation of the UN Convention. Our dear friend and colleague, Jolene, really made some amazing impact. We can still see where her activism was in letters, white, black under white. This is one of the many recommendations of the final report. It says, the committee recommends, blah, 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 in order to ensure full harmonization of the provisions of the conventions and actively involve representative organizations of persons with disabilities. There are other recommendations in which persons with psychosocial disabilities, as we are named under the convention, are expressly there. And that was because of Jolene and the team that supported here. Not me, because I didn't know enough. So it also mentions something very important, allocation of a budget, a time frame for implementation, and a monitoring mechanism. It has been said many times this morning, the importance of mechanism of monitoring and to be part of those mechanisms. By the way, this has not happened. So in this new review, we will go through each of the recommendations and tell the European Union that they have not complied with these recommendations. So just a few words about full and effective participation in society. For me, for us, meaningful participation is one that takes place in terms of equality, respect, responsibility, and transparency since the very beginning. It is not true that we participate if whoever invites us in the very last minute just to be there as a decorative figure, as a token. There's no use. We shouldn't accept those invitations. It implies having a voice with its own identity to debate, dialogue, and research consensus, or make decisions democratically. As Stephanie said, transparency and democracy are essential. We have to work with those two elements. And of course, to be included in the source of financing, which seldom happens. I am part of a commission of the Lancet review on towards eliminating stigma and discrimination. Let me tell you that I was against considering stigma and discrimination at the same level. Stigma is the mother of discrimination. It exists, and it will exist, who knows for how long. But discrimination is something that goes against the law. So, as I already said, right now, for a number of years, we support the human rights approach because it's a way to denounce discrimination. You can do a lot of things about stigma, of course, but, well, it would have some kind of results. But in my view, in our view, if we fight discrimination and we ask for our rights, that would make a real difference, maybe, I don't know, in a short term. So, well, we worked for 4 years, very hard. There were 25 commissioners, different groups. I was in the media group because I'm a journalist. I was fired when they found out my diagnosis, even though I think I was doing a good job, but anyway. And a group of lived experience. I must say that participation, we must be very much aware of instrumentalization, on how they pretend, some people, not all of course, to use us, to say, see, yes, this woman, this man has whatever, is a lived experience people, and he or she has participated. Oh, that's good. But unless we have a real voice and our points of view, our experiences are really taken into account, that's not really participation. So, well, a huge report was delivered, submitted, announced in the UN in Geneva in the 10th of October, and so on. But I am, in a way, not very happy with the result, because they really just add discrimination after stigma. They really talk about stigma and forget about discrimination. I tried, but I couldn't do more. So there were some good results of this. One of these is the key message is that stigma and discrimination violate basic human rights and have serious and toxic effects on people with mental health conditions, exacerbating marginalization and discrimination. We made a survey, a world survey, and some of the results that were very significant was that 90% of people with lived experience said that stigma and discrimination affect the majority of people with mental health problems. And 80% consider that stigma and discrimination can be worse than the mental health problem itself. So the main conclusion of this Lancet report was that social contact is the best way to fight stigma. And they recommend to include persons with lived experience leading or co-leading any activity, research, etc. And this is a recent work from WHO on the framework for meaningful engagement. And I invite you to go through it because it's really interesting. It talks in the way we understand participation and meaningful engagement should be in place. For example, it says, importantly, individuals with lived experience should no longer be excluded from the solutions that impact their health and well-being. There's also a mention to remuneration, and they say that ideally, utopically, peers should be paid at the same level that the rest of the people involved in whatever is the case. So we made a recommendation for the next, for the current joint action in mental health and well-being that's going to take place next Monday. And we recommended one of the sentences of this meaningful engagement of the WHO, which says, nothing about us without us. Meaningful engagement, respectful, dignified, and equitable inclusion of individuals with lived experience in a range of processes and activities within an enabling environment where power is transferred to people, valuing lived experience as a form of expertise and applying it to improve health outcomes. But you know, WHO 2017, I believe, created this pyramid in which, as you can see, the base is self-care and informal community care, where you can put peer support, peer-to-peer, etc. And informal community care and self-care are the most needed. But the reality, even though they are the cheapest, they are the less funded. And most of the funding from governments, the EU, who knows who else, goes to the hospitals, which is not needed. So I will go quickly. Let me see. Okay, I'll go quickly. This is a sentence I wrote a long time ago, but I think it's what I believe is peer-to-peer support. There's a kind of knowledge that only comes from one's own experience. It is the true experiential empirical knowledge, the fruit of suffering and the joy of overcoming it. When combined with an honest and loyal exchange with others like us, who have gone through the same, the results are prodigious. I have lived this together with many, many others. Only a person who has been there can fully understand and help us heal. This goes beyond empathy. These facts are the roots of the peer-to-peer knowledge. So, what should we highlight? That the role of we must point out that the role of peer experts should be that of a promoter, an active collaborator in equal conditions with all the members of the team. Meaningful involvement means that we are involved from the first stages, as I said before, and during all the project activity, evaluation, etc. Again, as my friend and colleague Stephanie Woolley said, transparency, and democratic rules are needed. Too often we users are instrumentalized and have a token role, which is against the CRPD and its recommendation. There have been an historical imbalance of power, we all know that, and we still know that, but we have never to accept to be a decorative figure. Conclusion, our participation must make the difference. We must be aware of instrumentalization, of being used, never accept to have a token role. It is to leave the role of Sikh to always become a citizen. Well, I will just spend 1 minute to talk about our trainings on peer-to-peer. We were the first, I believe, as far as we have found out, to hold trainings in 2009 of peer-to-peer, and we created a multidisciplinary program. We had trained the trainers, and then after that, people, the students that had attended, became also sometimes trainers for other peers and for professionals. We had also a training for learning how to make have colloquiums, teach certain things, etc. By now, we have had 10 of these train the trainers, peers to peers. And we have 36 trainings to emergency services since 2015. So we are the leaders of these trainings. We have created together with, in the case of emergency services, a psychologist and a psychiatrist and 2 peers, myself and one of these students. We are paid the same by the regional government. Very little, but we receive the same payment. And we used to evaluate this on stigma. Now we are trying to think what can we evaluate, and we are on our way. This train the trainers peers to peers that took place in 2009, 10, 11, then 12, then, well, was selected good practice by the European Commission. And it was, in a way, the embryon, the base on which an Horizon 2020 project occurred. So this is, again, July, democracy and human rights. And just to finalize, this is from Cervantes, Don Quixote, I think, who says, freedom, Sancho, is one of the most precious gifts that heaven has bestowed upon men. For freedom, as for honor, life may and should be ventured. And on the other hand, captivity is the greatest evil that can fall to the lot of man. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for my English.
Imamo kaj vprašanj?
Hello, my name is Xenia. I have one question, and this is, can all this wonderful thing that we accept people with mental health issues and we support them, can this backfire? Because what I see here is people with mental health issues, they don't really even want to get better. I see a lot of people like 15, 16 years old that see themselves as special and not really people that need help. They say that they are bipolar, for example, and are not going to change anything. Isn't it easier to fund organizations that give help to people with mental issues rather than change everything around the people with mental health issues?
I can talk about my own experience. My own experience, as I told you, was in a forum, online, very, very active every day, and afterwards meeting during years in a cafeteria. So I think we have to adapt the reality that we are living to what we can do in the first moment. But there are certain principles that, in my view, are unavoidable, and that's our rights. Maybe you cannot start talking about rights to people that are not willing to know anything but what they are doing right now. They say they are bipolar, which is a huge mistake, because you're, as Stephanie said, you're not bipolar. You have a name of a diagnosis, that's it. So I don't have the magic recipe, but I can tell you that when we hold these train-to-train, peer-to-peer trainings, something happens, always. Maybe this level, this other level, but we have a number of people that are happy to express themselves, to teach others, to talk. And it's something also a matter of patience and to keep going, keep going, keep going. I would suggest to try to have these groups, informal groups of persons with a diagnosis, and start just leaving them by themselves, knowing each other, talking about what worries them, and see what happens, not pushing them. You see, that's my opinion, but I don't know.
It was an interesting question, which is historically being asked and was decided in the easiest way before, and this is a problem we have actually with a disability. You are asking, maybe it is easier to just organize things that will treat persons with psychosocial issues rather than try to change environment around them. According to existing human rights standards, you cannot enforce changes on the person. So you simply don't have a choice. You have to respect the human rights of people with disabilities. And the attitude that first persons with disabilities must change and then become members of society is already accepted as wrong. For example, in case of wheelchair users, before there was this situation when society was saying, okay, this is not our fault, this person cannot climb the stairs, so this person basically has to stay at home, but our doors are open, you know? Yes, we have stairs, we don't have any ramps, but we are not obliged to build ramps. So if the person cannot access this building of the court, it's not our fault, it's the fault of the person. First, person needs to be fixed. We need to propose some sort of operation or maybe physiotherapy to change the person, and then the person gets accepted to a restaurant, to a court, to any sort of service, you know. Now, with the advent of CRPD, this attitude changed, because now they say everyone says that, okay, well, It's not the fault of the person, obviously. The person has the same rights as others. And maybe it's the fault of societies that we're not building ramps, that our buildings are not accessible for everyone. Because if the buildings are accessible, then people can access them and don't have these problems with participation, right? So the same holds for mental health services and mental health problems. And the fact that these services are so inhumane, so often based on violence, this causes even more stigma and desire to avoid any sort of identification with the problem. So people who see psychiatric institutions, for example, who see, these forced injections and other practices, they say, oh, I am not ill. I don't have any problem at all. I don't need any support, because they understand that the only form of support for them is these forced measures, you know. Psychiatry with the worst methodology possible, and they have these images in their brain. Even there are services, some services, operating around, they're less known to people. So they prefer to get rid of anything and say, well, we're just on our own, we don't need support. But if you build services that are based on humane values, that are respecting persons with mental health problems, that have peer supporters inside, you have all chances to arrange, with this freedom component, talk with people who are interested. Because usually people tend to be interested in talking with people having the same experiences or similar experiences. So first starts with this talk, then sharing experiences. And maybe if they do need support, and they learn about available normal support services, and then they can get and accept this support. But if you are trying to just design an organization that says, wow, our goal is to say that you're compliant with treatment, so we are going to make you compliant with treatment, then people will run away. They will not stay in such organizations. This is what is happening. So you cannot, by force, change the mental health of the person for the positive. You can just only lock the person inside and say, well, we are safe, you know, from these dangerous people, but this is not the solution. The solution is to spend more time, more resources, more attention, and build normal humane services, inclusive for everyone. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
So thank you all, and thank you all. I think it's time to check. Sorry.
Maybe I was a bit wrong understand Ksenia, but I got the impression that Ksenia wanted to say that maybe we as a society should go beyond the diagnose, that we as a society should not stick on the certain distress of person as a base to find the argument for the diagnose. So I understood Ksenia as a kind of thinking that as a society we have to build another construction and values of how to understand a person distress. So not thinking about bipolar or I don't know, all these lists of diagnoses that are in these manuals for psychiatrists, but simply see the people happy, unhappy, with problems, big or small, and so on. And in this case, I understand Ksenia as that the world should behave different to people with some kind of unhappiness.
Kot smo rekli, države, vsako leto eno število držav poroča v Ženevi pred posebnim odborom Združenih narodov za spoštovanje konvencije o pravicah invalidov. Zakaj? Torej, ljudje s psihosocialnimi oviranostmi po vseh kriterijih tudi sodimo med invalide, ker smo ljudje, ki smo določene čase svojega življenja v bistvu onemogočen pri opravljanju vsakdanjih stvari. In tukaj v bistvu kako bi rekel, na mednarodni ravni ni nobenega dvoma, da tudi sodimo med ljudi, ki jih pri nas imenujemo invalidi. Kar pomeni, da vsako leto Slovenija bo poročala leta 2024, to je bilo prestavljeno, morala bi že letos, ampak ti postopki tečejo in bo to zdaj. Torej, mora država poslati najprej neko poročilo, odbor Združenih narodov potem ji vrne neka vprašanja in na vprašanja mora potem država odgovarjati. Ob njenem odgovarjanju lahko pa tudi civilna družba, torej nevladne organizacije, sodelujejo že v samem procesu postavljanja vprašanj. Tukaj smo vsaj duševci letos nekoliko zamudili, vidimo pa, če si pogooglate pravzaprav, torej UNCRPD je spletna stran Združenih narodov in mirno greste po državi in boste videli, da v tem trenutku že obstajajo, mislim, da 4 poročila različnih, pri nas rečemo invalidskih organizacij, ki se nanašajo na posamezne člene in kaj se jim zdi, da v Sloveniji še ni urejeno. In zdaj bo odbor poslal državi Sloveniji v bistvu en vprašalnik, na katerega bo morala odgovoriti. Na isti vprašalnik bomo pa lahko tudi nevladniki povedali, kaj mi mislimo, ne vem, da je zelo gotovo, da se bo država izognila kakšnim odgovorom ali kakorkoli, ampak to je na koncu vse nek proces, ki se konča s končnim poročanjem v Ženevi in zato se meni zdi izjemno pomembno, torej Olga je letos sodelovala kot članica državne komisije in nevladnica pri poročanju v Ženevi na strani Gruzije. Zato si pravzaprav boljš uvoda ne bi mogli nič želeti. I was telling about the process and how you were a part of your state delegation in Geneva to report about NGO version of how does Georgia respect CRPD things. So if you are for it, that's where I would ask you to resume.
A very important thing that is waiting Slovenia is a review by the UNCRPD committee of how the EU is implementing UNCRPD. So you have the unique opportunity to actually get involved in this process and get your say in this review process by the UNCRPD committee. Why this is needed at all and how you can use it? It is needed because it's a UN process, which means it is very visible. Every country in the world, every organization, every interested individual can actually read about what is happening in Slovenia. Right now, we can read, for example, reports of European Disability Forum about Slovenia, reports of Validity, which is also our ally organization about situation in Slovenia. Also, the state report of Slovenia can be found, and this means, well, actually they didn't submit, they had this deadline in 2022, but somehow your state is hesitating. Maybe they did send it, but it is not yet published. It may be like that, but still, the information can be found, it is very visible. So usually countries and governments are very interested in having good reputation compared to other countries. They don't easily tolerate scandals, they don't tolerate bad assessments. They prefer to have it okay, like to have it on the basis where they say, well, we're on the same level as others. Potentially, it is better for them if something good is identified. So about the review procedure, first organizations submit list of issues, like they submit to the committee what, in their opinion, represents the challenge, how, for example, Slovenia is not implementing UNCRPD. You can do it article by article, or you can do it concentrating on separate articles. Usually it is better to have a group of organizations working on such a list of issues and on shadow reporting. But sometimes it is also possible to just submit it as one organization, especially if not many submissions are made, so that it is realistic for the committee to read actually what you wrote. So right now, Slovenian review is on the stage of shadow reports acceptance. So state report is not yet published, but shadow reports are already there. And you can still submit your own shadow report before the review, which is going to be in 2024 and in spring. So shadow report. A shadow report has its rules, so you can find how to write shadow reports. It's an instruction on the website of OHCHR. And the shadow report has word limits. So if you really have some critical information, and a lot of this critical information, you may really want to split the information between different organizations to highlight exactly the topics you want to cover. For example, one organization can focus on deinstitutionalization processes, another one can focus on legal capacity processes, and yet another on something related to employment, social inclusion, and other things. In this case, you will have better coverage of the information, and you can also go to the review of the CRPD committee in Geneva and personally participate in this review. So about the website, it is the ohchr.org. You can enter the website, you can choose in the country Slovenia, and you will have a page. Yeah.
Here's the homepage. It's very nice now. They've really improved it. You have lots of interesting information. You have special information for each country and for all the rules and all the dates and how to make your report. It's very, very useful, this website. And we can send you our presentations and send you this link. So if you want to go to a country, we put Slovenia, of course. Voila. And we have Slovenia. And we have all the information on the fact your country did ratify the UNCRPD and even the optional protocol, which means that your government said anybody whose rights have been violated under the CRPD can make a complaint to the CRPD committee if the country and the courts do not agree. And we will study your case and we will tell the government our opinion on what they should do. So then here, if you look at reporting, you're going to have all of the UN conventions and treaties. They're all here. The Convention Against Torture we talked about, civil and political rights, disappearance, all of these. And what interests us is CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So what is happening in Slovenia? We can see that the first stage was in 2017 already. And we can see, okay, who talked about our situation. Here we have the state party, because the signatories of the convention are called states parties. So here we can look at what the government said Slovenia is doing to comply with the convention. We can see what is called list of issues. Olga talked about the questions, because the state sends the report, then the committee, the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities makes a list of questions and says, well, that sounds interesting, but what about this? Why do you have these big institutions? What about support or whatever question? And the state must answer. And you can send your suggestions for questions to the Slovenian government, of course. And you can see that some people did. Here we have who? We have Autism Europe, who sent us something about Slovenia. Our friends from ENUSP, the European Network on Independent Living. Mental Health Europe, also a partner of ours. Even FRA, that Olga mentioned, the Fundamental Rights Agency in Europe, said, Slovenia, we are going to tell the committee what is going on. Then we have, I see, your National Council of Disabled Persons Organizations, which is a very important partner because they have the status with the United Nations. We can see that your ombudsman, your defender, also sent his report. It can be very interesting to see what do these people say about our country. And we looked at some of these documents. Unfortunately, it seems that the Slovenian authorities did everything in English. But you can, translate that, I hope, and try to understand what they had to say. And then we look at lately, here's the upcoming review of your country. And you see, as Olga said, they were supposed to send the report in 2022, and they did not. And unfortunately, it's not a court. There's no way they can force the country to be on time. But you can give them pressure and say, where is your report? We want to know how you are implementing our rights, And then you have our friends from the European Disability Forum that ENUSP is a member of and also on the board. And you have these other organizations that are apparently interested. You have your NHRI, National Human Rights Institution. They, along with the National Disability Council, have a special place, as well as all the DPOs, Disabled Person Organization, or CSO, Civil Society Organization. That means that you can write a report. There's so many words allowed, You do your report, and the United Nations will put this right here for everyone to see. Everyone can see it. It's amazing, really amazing. I think, because we did this in France last year, and it was the best experience I had in my life, really. Why? Because you are able to meet privately, without the state, without authorities, with the members of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And most of the members, almost all of them, are persons with disabilities themselves. They are not paid for this job. So you have a private meeting with them, and they listen to you, and they understand you, and they want to help, and they want to improve. It's absolutely amazing. So I really encourage you, come back. I really encourage you to get involved and to look at this website together. I see the Deaf Blind Association of Slovenia also sent their opinion, now again in English only, but your report could also be here, and the whole world, everywhere, can see what you think the Slovenian government is doing for persons with psychosocial disabilities. I hope that was clear. There's a question, I think. You have a question.
I wanted to ask who is responsible in Slovenia for this report? I mean, who should send it? Who should write it?
Usually
You
it's
say the government. But
usually it's the Minister of Health. It's usually the Minister of Health, or it could be a Minister of Europe. It depends. But we can look. Let's look to see who.
The government will approve it.
You have two ministries like health and social affairs separately, right? So sometimes it is written by Ministry of Foreign Affairs. based on the information received from other ministries, because they are in charge of international relations, you know. Well, in any case, it would be a good idea to ask, maybe to write to the government, to just ask, well, we're interested about, you know, state report of Slovenia about CRPD, and maybe you have any timeline for this report, or maybe you already sent it, but it's not published yet, not acknowledged. Sometimes they send it and keep it secret for half a year, just to not let you this information, you know. And in your case, they are also not translating it, obviously, in Slovenian, which makes it hard for persons with disabilities to read it, right? So you need to be a professional to actually read it in English, understand the complicated language, terminology, you know. So it looks like a barrier, specially created to prevent people from actually saying what they want to say. In terms of shadow reports, alternative reports, you can write them as well. So, but you need to be an organization. Individuals cannot write such reports, but as an organization, you can write, and of course it will be much better if it is a group of organizations, especially with persons with lived experience of mental health problems, or like beneficiaries of institutions involved in this process, because this information has a priority with the committee. They first listen from persons with lived experience and their representative organizations. And later, if there are none, then they turn to reports of professionals. But so you didn't ever have any opportunity to engage in this procedure, right? And you didn't hear about it. Have you heard about shadow reporting before? Just raise your hand if you did. Yeah, well, Tony, okay.
So here you can see what the government wrote about each article. So your government says one little paragraph on Article 14, one of our most important articles, liberty and security. And Slovenia answers one paragraph, Zunio. Okay, is it true that Zunio really protects you? Does Zunio really prohibit discrimination, harassment, and freedom? I don't know. You can say, no, it doesn't. And this is what we think. And this is what the government should do. And this is incredible. I think it's incredible. And I can show you some pictures of our group. We did crowdfunding, okay? You know, crowdfunding on internet. And we brought a little group of our Advocacy France members to Geneva. And we got an Airbnb apartment, not too expensive. And we managed to spend several days and go to the meetings and meet privately and answer the questions. Because the committee, they have a lot of questions for you. They don't believe the government. They know the government is not telling the truth. And people with lived experience have something else to say. They are there. They know their rights are violated. And Article 15, freedom from torture or other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. How many people like me, you feel you were punished because you had a problem? How many feel you were punished? I don't know. I was like in shock the way I was treated. So this is extremely, extremely useful. I think, anyway, and I hope it inspires you. You have some time ahead to do this, to work together. But again, we're not talking about professionals. We're talking about persons with lived experience.
Yeah, well, it can be done also together with professionals, especially if a big group is implementing it, but with real involvement, meaningful involvement of persons with lived experience. And then in delegation in Geneva, it's very crucial to include persons with lived experience, like residents of social care houses or victims of these practices, to enable them to talk directly to the member of committees and explain the situation. It is very strategically important. And about the format, right? So you read the report of your government and you get angry about it. And when you get angry, you start to write down what you think about the situation. Because the governments, sometimes they do not really lie, but they are like manipulating this information, showing it from different angle, and hiding everything else that is a bit problematic under the carpet. So it's not like real lie, but it's manipulation still of information. For example, the government may say, well, we do have the institutionalization strategy in our country, and they are not saying that it's not being implemented, that there are no real mechanisms, that there is no budget put in this strategy, right? So you as professionals and as users of services can see this from practical angle. Even the ministries may not see how it doesn't work in practice. They may really have illusions that it is working, especially when they do not have normal monitoring mechanism present. So they may even have this illusion that indeed what they design is working. So no, and at this point, your opinion matters, because you write, no, well, in this case, well, this program indeed exists, but we have that challenges. You can, even if it's about persons with lived experience of, coercion or like certain types of bad treatment, you can just say about your own experience in the report. It doesn't have to be bureaucratic, you know. It has to be informative. It has to provide information to the committee.
Be really authentic, you know. It's your story, your life. And what's amazing is if you are able to do this, this can be a big jump for user organizations, survivor organizations, because the government is going to go, uh-oh, who are these people? These people are talking to the United Nations about our country. They didn't expect that, okay? We have our nice ombudsman, we have our National Human Rights Institute, we have our National Disability Council. Who are these people? And then you are in Geneva in the meetings with the same status as these other big players, you know? And your report is on the website, just like your ombudsman, just like the government. So people notice, and then you become a stakeholder, you know? You have more power. And so that's another reason it's very interesting to do this. And it doesn't have to be a long report. And you can choose only certain articles, like Article 14, Liberty and Security, Article 12, we talked about, legal capacity, guardianship, Article 15, freedom from torture, ill treatment, Article 19 on independent living. For example, with deinstitutionalization, we talk about trans-institutionalization because it's not really deinstitutionalization. It's creating smaller, mini institutions. It's not really independent living.
The government of Slovenia is creating the institutionalization strategy, right? So this is a strategic opportunity to actually get involved also from this angle. Because you can communicate to the committee. By the way, you can communicate to the committee about any problems you experience with regard especially to the strategic documents, even before the review. Because members of the committee sometimes can visit your country. They are just coming with like a visit, official, checking what is happening. Like in Georgia, we had this visit of Special Rapporteur on Disability, but we also had visits from the committee of the UNCRPD committee, so committee members. And they also can come and they can talk to organizations, to persons with lived experience, to media. They have press conferences about all these things happening. So it serves the purpose of attracting more attention to problematic processes. If you have, for example, a process in the institutionalization strategy which says, oh, let's create many small, comfortable institutions, and this is not compatible with the CRPD, right? So the pressure from the government is very big. They are happy about this. So you really need to involve UN mechanism to stop this, to communicate with the government. First, you may want to write a collective letter to the CRPD committee members and also to the special rapporteur on disability, saying that, you know, our government is planning to create a strategy which is going to be about trans-institutionalization. And then you may even ask to visit the country or issue some sort of a statement, and then usually they are like agreeing to do this. And you may like prevent a lot of problems. It's better to report before they legalize a document than try to later correct what they already did in a wrong way, right? So, but the problem can also be with your knowledge about standards, because if people don't know how it should be, it is very problematic to evaluate the situation correctly, right? So for shadow report, it's not so important to have this 100% correct evaluation of the situation, but still it's advisable to read previous reports, previous concluding observations of the committee issued towards other countries, just to have the idea of what is still not being implemented. Slovenia had this review in 2017, so you have these concluding observations issued. You can go through the issued concluding observations and try to see what was not done, for example, or what was done but in a wrong way. It's a very valuable information. Yeah. Russian? Yeah, Russian.
Because it's official language of the Romania. Right. So, but do you want me to look at? You want to see this? Maybe some people understand. Or no, we won't. English is better.
Chinese, Stephanie. The last one.
To show you, just so you understand, it's a language. It's
assumes that everybody is speaking the Russian here.
No, I don't know. It's just a question of language. It's just so that you can better understand. If you understand Russian better than English, it's a language. I'm not talking about other political aspects. So here is what it looks like. The concluding observations. This was in 2018 after your review, and this would be very important to read this document. And with Deep L translation, you can translate this automatically to Slovenian, And this is the CRPD committee, and they say their areas of concern, all of their recommendations, what the committee wants from Slovenia, the problems with rights. Let's see equality and non-discrimination. Let's see what the committee is worried about with Article 14, for example. What did they see is happening in Slovenia? Okay. They are concerned about your Mental Health Act, allowing for the detention of persons with psychosocial disabilities on the basis of their impairment and their treatment without consent in psychiatric hospitals directly. And they're talking about persons with disabilities. They're not just talking about us. That's how important psychiatry is. That's the power of psychiatry. And here they're worried about lack of reasonable accommodation and hygiene, medical care, and here's the recommendations. This is what the United Nations told Slovenia to do in 2018. Okay, now it's 2023. Did the government do this? You can find out. How are they really ensuring the integrity and security of persons with disabilities? Are they really doing all of this, And you can answer. And here's freedom from torture. The committee is very worried about seclusion, physical, chemical, or mechanical restraint, or any other non-consensual medical treatment in all medical facilities, in particular psychiatric hospitals, that may amount to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Now, this is the case for most countries, right? They say the same thing about France. I'm not, you know. So this is great. Look at what they're saying about Slovenia. You can tell them. And you can tell the government, look, it's not me, it's the United Nations telling you to do this. So that's really useful, you know, I think.
Some people were interested in employment. Maybe we can take a look what the recommendation was for employment, because it's not always necessary to focus on the most painful or problematic articles. If you don't feel confident enough about torture and the deprivation of liberty, you can just speak about other components: the right to health, the right to rehabilitation, the right to decent social conditions to live, the right to political participation, the right to cultural participation, right? So you can choose less painful topics if you feel more confident about those topics. Also, for example, the right to education and employment, and this also can be something that is based on the real experience of persons with lived experience who you like have connections with in your services, and or your direct experience. And you can just try to maybe do some survey or use already existing information and just send the committee this information. Yes, the policies exist, but sometimes they're not implemented at all. And sometimes you don't even have policy. So it is really important to check like what was recommended by the committee in these concluding observations, what was done. Maybe something has to be checked. Maybe you don't know whether it's done. You're not sure. In this case, you may want to write to the government asking for some clarification on the matter. Yeah, well, usually in my country, we can send a request for information and they are obliged to do it in 10 days' time. I'm not sure about Slovenia, but I hope you have similar procedure for public information, you know? So you may just ask this question and receive this information, and based on their reply, also write the report. Is it about employment? No, 24, I think. 27, yeah. So what the committee recommends? The committee recommends that the state party adopt measures aimed at promoting an inclusive, open and accessible labor market in all sectors for all persons with disabilities. Is it done? Like promoting inclusive, open labor market for all persons with disabilities? Yeah. So, well, it was in 2017 and now it is already 2023. So how they are promoting the idea of the open labor market, accessible for all persons with all disabilities, you know, not only for wheelchair users, you know, but for also for persons with mental health conditions. How they are doing it? If you don't see the market in place, you can just say, wow, this is not done. Maybe.
You know, you can send articles from the press. Maybe sometimes scandals come out in your press in Slovenia, and the committee can't know everything. So if you want to send articles from the press, you want to send in annex to your report testimonies. It could be anonymous testimony. It doesn't have to be you. It could be anyone in Slovenia who says, this is what happened to me. And they read this, and they care about it, and they do something about it. They try.
Well, they obviously recommended a bunch of measures. Look, there was a question from the audience about how we can get capitalists interested in employment of persons with disabilities, right? So one of the ways is to provide incentives, to provide some incentives related to maybe release from certain taxes or maybe some other type of incentives, but this is the work of the state. So the committee says exactly that. that the state of Slovenia should create specific incentives for employers and provide reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities, particularly for persons with intellectual disabilities, aimed at facilitating their inclusion in the open labor market. So the talk is about specific incentives for employers. Do you see anything like in practice about that? Okay, okay. Okay, incentives exist, but probably they were not done in consultation with employers. Maybe they are of the wrong sort or maybe not severe enough. So it was done, but it wasn't done in ineffective way, let's say, right? So that's what you would like to mention in the shadow report, that, well, it is there, but it is not working. And you can elaborate on why, in your opinion, it's not working. Also, there is this quotas thing, ensure equal requirements for employment quotas in the public administration and information services and other work sectors, and monitor the implementation. So about monitor the implementation, you can just ask the government, wow, we are interested in monitoring of the implementation of how you really use quotas in administrative and information services and in other work areas. Please provide us this information about monitoring, how many persons are employed exactly in the administration of, for example, mayor's office or like some other administrative units, how many people, and how many of them are actually with mental health problems, because they sometimes employ persons with a wheelchair, but they do not employ persons with psychosocial disability. So if you discover that they don't have anyone or don't have information about that, you just write and send to the committee. And this is an effective way of pushing your government, even if you are small and not really having big resources to do some big campaigns here. You still have enough resource to read, to sit, and to write about it, and to send this communication to this committee to achieve changes. Obviously, well, now it is important to have some feedback from you. What do you perceive as a problem that is worth to be mentioned in your shadow report? Like, imagine you are going to do this shadow report. How would you, like, what is the topic you would like to concentrate on, you identify as problematic? Any volunteers to talk? Few seconds to think about problems. Yeah, sometimes there are too many. Yeah. So no problems at all, right? Wow.
I see three problems we should address, three most visible problems. One is coercion and violence in the psychiatric hospitals. We had a big scandal with Ljubljana's psychiatry, which ended with nothing, you know. The director is still there. The criminal investigation is still going on, and results are very uncertain. And the second one is mental health law, which is going into a parliament again with all those in our what we see in very unlawful practices concerning children and adolescents. And some, the third I've forgotten because there are so many. But what I would like to ask you, Olga and Stephanie, my impression, and I'm afraid some others too, is that concerning the last recommendation of UNSRPD was that our government, you know, kind of woke up, said, oh hell, what the hell is that? And turned around and sleeping again, you know. So what is the point? What's the end point? Because nobody will come from Geneva and say, you are a bad minister, go away, find another one, you know. What is the final goal for us? That's my concern.
Well, nobody will come from Geneva and say you are a bad minister. Well, about say directly that you are a bad minister, that's true, but nobody will come from Geneva at all and nobody will criticize. That's not true, because they do come. But they need some sort of, some organizations ready to provide this information. Otherwise, they come, they speak with the government, and the government, again, is manipulating with this information. So if nobody is going to speak with them, right, they may be less ready to actually come to country and just talk to the government, because they don't have any access to the real information in this case, right?
But here you do see there's allegations here. Allegations of torture and ill treatment in psychiatric institutions.
Allegations?
So someone has been telling the CRPD committee that there are cases of torture, ill treatment, and here again, with your human rights ombudsman. So the government and the human rights ombudsman of Slovenia, they need these resources to address these allegations of torture and ill treatment in institutions. So often it's the parents, often it's another organization that denounces this. I don't know.
It's for the recording, you know.
I think one of those accusations is actually the PITS and validity, because I worked with PITS and validity on one of the cases of coercion and in closed wards of institutions. So I think that's what that paper is about. It was a case of a underage detainee in a social care facility when he was detained when he was 17. He's still there, by the way. So I think that's one of the things that was mentioned in 2017, and it's probably going to be mentioned again in 2023, because nothing has been done in that particular case. Thank you.
Well, it was the first review in 2017, now they have the second review. Maybe they didn't understand quite the impact on the first review, you know, but now, after they were already unable to comply with the UN regulations, right? It's a matter of reputation also, of bad reputation with regard to the implementation of human rights standards. They don't want to have a bad image, you know. Usually the governments really avoid having some sort of scandals attached to their names. All this information is, it is open, but not many people know about it, because it is not promoted, chewed enough and distributed among population. Someone has to take out some sort of pieces of this report and say, wow, committee recommended that, and what the government is doing, or the government tried to do it, but it didn't work. So if there is no work attached to these documents are not even read sometimes, even by the government. So someone has to chew on that, to analyze this, to take good things that are interesting for you and just promote and push for these things. And then if it's like about visibility, if it's about media involvement, then government gradually becomes more interested in at least complying with these regulations. It's not a good idea to openly declare that we don't care about UN, you know. It's really not a good idea. They really avoid to do it. They can try to hide things, stay silent, but if this doesn't work, then they will try to do something. Even with my government, I'm from Georgia, and it's not even EU, but they are like really worried about their image, about their reputation. So yeah, sometimes they really try to organize some committees with tokenistic involvement of persons with disabilities, just to sit there to say that, yeah, we were involving persons with disabilities. well, then you have this opportunity to really get involved or just to say, well, we refuse to get involved in a tokenistic way. So it's about fight, it's about advocacy, it's about reminders to the government, but as a rule, this mechanism is strong, despite the situation like that it's not implemented now, but still it's a good way, because even you can even say compare Slovenia with some really poor and not developed country. To take something good that is happening, for example, in, I don't know, Nigeria or Angola, and say, wow, in Angola they have this good service of like, for example, psychosocial support, like friendship bench. They are talking actually to people with mental health problems. They're like involving persons with lived experience in this work. And here, with all our resources, we're incapable of doing this. So you can just also play on the insecurities of the government. Oh, we are worse than Angola, or we are worse than Nigeria. Who says that? Why? So immediately you have this emotional answer. And also media can get very interested. Wow, how come? How happens that we are worse than African, that country or this country? Wow, it's not possible. So, and at this point you can just say, wow. And we have these arguments. You didn't do that. You didn't do that, you didn't do this, so what can we say about that? So you can use also psychological pressure, let's say, on the government to achieve a certain impact. WHO published a compilation of good practices in mental health. They divided it in 2020. They divided it into chapters. Some practices are used in crisis services. Some are used in homes, residential services. Some are used in outreach mental health services. But they try to compile these practices throughout the world. That's why I'm saying about African countries. They did include one practice from African countries, this friendship bench, in the compilation of best practices. So you can really refer to this instrument to say, well, we need to do something like that. It is possible, but yeah, we need some support, we need some resources, some structured support from the government, municipalities. First of all, you yourself need to get familiar with this type of services and with these human rights standards to know and to be sure what is the correct direction of your actions. And then with all these documents, you go to the government and try to get the result. Well, basically, this is about advocacy. Yes, this is actually the compilation of the guidance. Yeah, you can download this guidance directly. It's, I believe, only in English, right? But it's being translated in other languages as well. Yeah, so.
And they have also a lot of technical packages. This is very interesting. I think the majority of you are professionals here. So this is very interesting, these technical packages, because they really explain how, look at all these documents are available for you. And they explain all of these services, mental health crisis service, for example, human rights-based approach. So you can download this guide and you can talk to other professionals. You can see what the WHO recommends, how you can put this into action in your country, adapt it, of course, you know, personalize it for Slovenia. And it's very, very interesting. And again, because it's WHO, it's not me, you might have more of a chance. You know? And what Olga was talking about earlier is called name and shame. Name and shame, that's what you do. You say, you did this and shame on you, you know? And then sometimes we think that the general public does not know how people are treated in psychiatry. If the average person in Slovenia, even if you have 2 million people, if they knew how people were treated, maybe that would change practices, because it could change stigma, it could change discrimination, it could change the situation if people knew You know, and this can happen to anyone. As you know, anyone can get caught up in psychiatry and lose their life.
In regards to what would happen if people knew, there was an open day in the hospitals in Slovenia in light of the International Day of Patients, and one of the biggest hospitals that was contacted with was also the psychiatric hospital in Ljubljana. They never responded back. They did not want to participate. They didn't even respond. They don't want to participate in open day. I know because I'm part of one of the NGOs that works as the general patient advocacy organization. They didn't respond. So I guess they have no interest of opening the doors and letting people see how these things actually look.
But is this an information we should also use in our shadow reports? You know? That they simply do not want to play as other hospitals do.
It's an indication of a problem. It actually shows that there is a problem. Because if you don't have anything to hide, then you can open doors and show, right? So if you are not opening doors, there is a problem. But it's a good effort also to try to establish a monitoring mechanism with the involvement of organizations and persons with lived experience to get access from the government to these closed facilities and to get this information. And in this case, you can do this educational work like in Romania they are doing about all these horrible cases. You can publish some photos, well, without, of course, personal information of the people involved, right? But in general, photos of legs, of something, you know. And such photos, in Romania, 2 ministers lost their seat after the scandal. So you can also achieve some changes also with informing people with the help of mass media and publishing these monitoring reports widely about what is happening. Also, people who are survivors of institutions, they can be, well, some of them may agree to talk sometimes at the press conferences, or sometimes they can just record videos and just publish the videos. You can compile on a website number of videos of people who survived certain types of restraints, and this also impacts public because they are interested in human stories, you know, and when they see a human and the human says that he was like almost tortured in psychiatry, and this is not only one human but a lot of humans, like many, well, some, at least 3, well, persons, different persons who will be speaking about it, it will well, get impact on people, and media tends to then get interested in those survivors. They are taking their contacts or seeking for their contacts, and they're then inviting these people to some shows, and it will be further promoted, of course, if the people are empowered enough to get involved in such activities, because it may be very stressful for them to engage in such type of activities. But I and my few colleagues, very few of them, we do it, and it has impact really, because media and society, they both like they say, wow, we didn't know about it, something should be done about it. And the government eventually started to do something about it. But at one point, they even had the ombudsman, they were writing reports, monitoring reports about institutions, and it wasn't helping. Then the ombudsman of Georgia entered with the media team one of the institutions, and they just filmed. Not people, but they filmed the situation without the faces of people were covered. And they published this video. And exactly this fact, not the extensive reports with legal statistics, this media footage caused the closure of the psychiatric facility, because immediately society started to ask, what the hell is going on? It shouldn't be like that, do something about that. And the institution was closed. So maybe some sort of such strategies can be also implemented. But since you have this review of Slovenia, right, not so far from here, right? So maybe you would want first to put efforts into creating a shadow report and to reporting for the committee, and later focus on other types of work with regard to advocacy and media, and on follow-up to the concluding observations, the second that you will get. Well.
And finally, I just wanted to mention that some countries have gone very far with this. In fact, they are now demanding what we call reparations. They want compensation for the way they were treated. Can you imagine that because you were locked up and drugged and treated like shit and institutionalized, that you could actually have a case, you could win a case, you could be awarded remedy, if it's money, if it's a job, if it's an apartment, whatever, for the way you were treated. And the optional protocol I mentioned is one way, but that requires exhaustion of national remedies. So you have to go through court in Slovenia, first level, second level, appeal, Supreme Court, whatever, okay. Then you can go appeal via this optional protocol. However, there is another procedure that the special rapporteur, who is not a member of the Committee of Persons with Disabilities, it's a special rapporteur on the rights of persons with disability, currently Gerard Quinn from Ireland, and they can accept any complaint from anyone in the world directly on the website. You have a form, I think there's only the official languages, but in English, and you click and you fill out the form and you say, dear Mr. Rapporteur, Special Rapporteur, I was treated like this, this is what happened to me, I want you to investigate, and I want you to contact me, and I want you to tell my government, I want compensation, I want a remedy. And this is available to anyone, okay, in the world, and it may take several years, I admit, because they have a long, you can imagine, a lot of people, not a lot, but many people do this. And I have seen cases where it has really, really helped. Because it's not a court, but when the special rapporteur of persons with disabilities from the United Nations contacts the Minister of Health in Slovenia and says, Mr. X told me this happened, this happened, this happened, this is unacceptable, what are you planning to do? We recommend that you release this person, that you do this for them, that, you know, well, the government, okay, this may change things and it's your right to do that. I just wanted to mention, and it's useful to have training. You know, if someone from ENUSP or some other experts can come and help you draft or help you think more about this report, it would be great if you wanted to get involved this year or next year. It'd probably be next year on the review.
Yeah, any more questions? Questions, comments?
I would just like to ask, how is this website called? Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And I meanwhile would want to ask you whether you heard about advanced directives. Anything? Advanced directives. Tony, yeah, but others, no, right? So you don't know about this mechanism. One of the yeah, well, yeah, you can say.
It was in very old books about social work here in Slovenia that I read it and learned about it. And the authors called it Psychiatrični testament. it's the thing Olga is talking about, but it's also a very important thing.
Okay, here it is. You want to see any? Look, here we have it. Here is our special rapporteur for the United Nations. Okay. And you see Gerard Quinn here. We've known him for a long time. And submitting complaints. And these are called special procedures communications. And they explain, it can be in the past. And then they explain how to do this. They explain what is the purpose, what they can do, the criteria, how they assess this. It's the Special Rapporteur's website. And then they explain what happens when you send your submission. And it may take, like I said, some time. The experts, okay. Sometimes, if it's really, really urgent, they can do something in 24 hours. And here you have the online form, you see? You can just click right here. Of course, you want to think about this. They give you more information. They explain what the special procedures are. And you have more information. You find out how to do this, how they work. And you can start filing your submission. And as you can see, in 3 languages, okay, English, French, and Spanish. You want to make a new submission. And in France, we've had several people who do this. And you can also do this anonymously, because they know that there can be retaliation. They know that it may be difficult for people to publicly say this, you know? So, if you know people that this could interest, or you want to try this option, it's available. It's interesting.
So it's the same website which is used for monitoring of what is happening with the reports. So it's under one and the same website. You just need to check Special Rapporteur on Disability. And then there is this dimension of this website. Okay, I mentioned advanced directives. I just wanted to briefly explain what it is all about. Advanced directive is like will of the person. Persons normally can leave their will when they expect themselves to die. Like if you expect that you will die, you are creating this document of will. Legal will. But in this case, advanced directives in mental health means that the person expects not death, but mental health crisis. And in this case, according to the same mechanism, the person can write in advance what he or she wants to have during this crisis. What sort of support they need or don't need, which doctor they prefer or which service they prefer. Well, who needs to take care of their dog, or maybe something along the lines that you need to that they want to listen to that music, for example, at that time, or be left alone for some time. So it is not only medical. It is a complex document which may contain many chapters, but it can also be very brief, depends on the person. The point is that usually the person shares this document with either friends or colleagues or family members or treating psychiatrists or social workers or psychologists to just let them know what is the will of the person in case the crisis is developed. And when the person is unable to communicate the preferences, then the service is required to actually open the document and read what are the preferences of the person. And they follow these preferences according to the possible reality. But if the person says, I don't want this to be implemented, then the priority is the will of the person at this moment, not something that the person wrote before. So this works only for situations when the person is not able to communicate normally, like not capable of concentrating on things, or like not capable of really speaking, like not either because of depression or because of psychotic episode or something else. So in this case, this advanced directive may really help professionals and families and friends to understand what the person wants. And the role of peer supporters and role of professionals is also to help the person to create this document. It's not that they are creating instead of the person. No, they are creating with the person, or they are just providing information to the person to enable the person to write this document. Yeah, or to peers, and this is very useful and is recommended by the UNCRPD committee because it's one way of respect of legal capacity of the person. You respect the will of the person even when the person is not able to really communicate will at that moment. So this something is very important. One of the good practices that need to be implemented everywhere because it's very critical. Basically, well, it is mentioned in the best practices of WHO and also in the committee recommendations. So it is not something that you will invent just from thin air. No, it is already working. Okay, so if you don't have any other questions, we may just go with your impressions, your thoughts about what you heard, and maybe you would want to share some remarks about the information, whatever you would like to share, please feel free. Yeah.
If not, first I have a proposition. You know, because I know I'll be writing the shadow report for my, for the things I think they should be there. And probably some of you will do it too. So if you simply contact me and we make a kind of committee which will sit, I don't know, once a week, next few weeks and consider what shall the best things be. So if you feel like it, please contact me and we'll see. I have your emails and we will make a kind of list. And as I know, ladies from ENUSP will be helping us all the time with the knowledge and expertise. Okay.
And the committee appreciates it when you have an informal consortium or a group. They really appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. And now, are there any final remarks about the conference?
I would just like to thank the ladies because this is the first time I've heard about really helping persons with mental health problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, another thing is, if anyone wants to join, you know, they say who the boss for this part of Europe is, so you can contact me or contact us via our homepage, and we'll be very, very pleased to get some new fighters. It's a beautiful fight, but it's rather exhausting, you know. So feel free to join.
Yeah, indeed, we will be there to support any sort of shadow reporting. We are very interested, so we can help with this analysis of the existing information and also with the formulation of the shadow report, because many of us have already done it for our own countries. We have the experience. Okay, well, I suppose we are announcing the end of the conference. It was a big pleasure to meet all of you, to listen about your problems also during the break session. And I really hope that the institutionalization reform in Slovenia will go correctly. And I very much hope that people who are currently in coercion in services will get their freedom. But I also hope that it will not stop only on the institutionalization, that indeed persons with mental health problems will have equal opportunity to get involved in employment, to get the fair jobs in open labor market, and education, and involvement also in political and cultural events on an equal basis with others. This is the end goal of the convention, the equality in every dimension of social life, and this is what we are advocating for and hope to achieve. But well, with your help, obviously, because it's not possible to do it only from European some sort structure. It's necessary to do things on the ground, to change things at the national level. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a very nice rest of the day. Thank you.